Chapter 16. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Look now, Yahweh has restrained me from bearing. I pray you, go to my maid. It may be that I may obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, My wrong be upon you. I've given my maid to your bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Yahweh judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as it pleases you. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of Yahweh found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, from whence did you come? And where will you go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of Yahweh said to her, Return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her hands. And the angel of Yahweh said to her, I will multiply your seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of Yahweh said to her, Behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahweh has heard your affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of Yahweh that spoke to her, You see me, for she said, Have I also here looked after him that sees me? Wherefore the well was called Beher Laharoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. End of chapter. Genesis chapter 17. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be you perfect. And I will make my covenant between you and I will multiply you exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and Yahweh talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. Neither shall your name any more be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations out of you, and kings shall come out of you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be an Elohim to you and to your seed after you. And I will give to you and to your seed after you the land wherein you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. And Yahweh said to Abram, You shall keep my covenant, therefore, you and your seed after you in their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your seed after you. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations, he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger which is not of your seed. He that is born in your house, and he that is bought with your money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. And Yahweh said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give you a son also of her. Yes, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born to him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said to Yahweh, Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And Yahweh said, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear to you at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and Yahweh went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day, as Yahweh had said to him. And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the selfsame day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael his son. And all the men of his house, born in the house, and bought with money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. End of chapter. Genesis chapter 18. And Yahweh appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, as he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and 3 men stood near him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My sovereign, if now I have found favor in your sight, do not pass away, I pray you, from your servant. Let a little water, I ask you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, and I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort you your hearts. After that you shall pass on. For therefore are you come to your servant. And they said, So do, as you have said. And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, and knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran to the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it to a young man, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said to him, Where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, In the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. And Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind them. Now Abram and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old also? And Yahweh said to Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the time appointed I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. And the men rose up from there and looked toward Sodom. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And Yahweh said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahweh, to do justice and judgment, that Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. And Yahweh said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it which has come to me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from there and went toward Sodom. But Yahweh stood yet before Abraham. And Abraham drew near and said, Will you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? What if there be 50 righteous within the city? Will you also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are there? That be far from you to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and the righteous should be as the wicked, and that be far from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And Yahweh said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak to Yahweh, which I am but dust and ashes. What if there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous? Will you destroy all the city for lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he spoke to him yet again, and said, What if there be 40 found there? And he said, I will not do it for 40. And he said to him, Oh, let not Yahweh be angry, and I will speak. What if there are 30 found there? And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak to my sovereign. What if there shall be 20 found there? And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let not Yahweh be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. What if 10 shall be found there? And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And Yahweh went his way, as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. End of chapter. Genesis chapter 19. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold now, my masters, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and stay all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, No, but we will stay in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in to him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said to him, Where are the men which came into you this night? Bring them out to us, that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door to them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Look now, I have 2 daughters which have not yet known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out to you, and do ye to them as is good in your eye. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one came in to travel, and he will need be a judge. Now will we deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to breaking the door. But the men put forth their hand, and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, Have you here besides son-in-law, and your sons, and your daughters, and whatsoever you have in the city? Bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxed great before the face of Yahweh, and Yahweh has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for Yahweh will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked to his sons-in-law. And when the morning rose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters which are here, lest you be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, Yahweh being merciful to him. And they brought him forth, and set him outside the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought him forth abroad, that he said, Escape for your life, do not look behind you, neither stay you in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest you be consumed. And Lot said to them, Oh, not so, my sovereign. Behold now, your servant has found grace in your sight, and you have magnified your mercy, which you have showed to me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. Behold now, this city is near to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said to him, See, I have accepted you concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city for the which you have spoken. Haste you, escape there, for I cannot do anything till you become there. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered to Zoar. Then Yahweh rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him. She became a pillar of salt. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before Yahweh, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when Yahweh destroyed the cities of the plain, that Yahweh remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. And he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in to us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in, and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not perceive when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child from their father. And the firstborn bore a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son, and she called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon to this day. End of chapter. Genesis chapter 20. And Abraham journeyed from there toward the south country, and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and traveled in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But Yahweh came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, You are a dead man, for the woman which you have taken, she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Yahweh, will you also slay a righteous nation? Did he not say to me, She is my sister? And even she herself said, He is my brother? In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And Yahweh said to him in a dream, Yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not suffer you to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for you, and you shall live. And if you restore her not, know you that you shall surely die, you and all that are yours. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, What have you done to us? And what have I offended you in, that you have brought upon me and upon my kingdom a great sin? You have done deeds to me that ought not be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What did you see that you had done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought, Surely a fear of Yahweh is not in this place, and they will kill me for my wife's sake. Yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came to pass, when Yahweh caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, This is your kindness which you shall show to me. At every place wherever we shall come, say of me, He is my brother. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and gave them to Abraham, and restored Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, My land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. And unto Sarah he said, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. He is to you a covering of the eyes, unto all that are with you, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bore children. For Yahweh had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech, because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. End of chapter. Genesis